And the breaking news is a man has been arrested after a car crashed into security barriers outside the Houses of Parliament. Welcome to viewers from BBC World. We can tell you that armed police responded to the incident, which happened at 7:37 this morning. A number of pedestrians have been injured, although the Metropolitan Police do say, quote, "At this stage, officers do not believe that anybody is in a life-threatening condition. Cordons are in place to assist the investigation and Westminster Tube Station is closed." Let's go live to the scene now and talk to our correspondent, Jonathan Blake. And Jonathan, just describe where you are in relation to the incident.
Well, I'm standing at the edge of the police cordon, which was quickly put in place after that car crashed into, it seems, several cyclists in the barriers outside the Houses of Parliament this morning. We're a few hundred metres away from Parliament itself at the end of Lambeth Bridge, and behind me you can probably see the heavy police presence which is here. And just in the last few moments, more police vehicles have arrived, and in the hour or so that we've been standing here reporting what has happened, more police vehicles have been arriving seemingly every few minutes or so. From pictures that were posted on social media and from eyewitness accounts, people that we've spoken to who were in the vicinity at the time, a picture seems to be building of a car being driven deliberately from one side of the road across to the other and hitting several cyclists at the corner of Parliament Square. Now, I'll stress it's a very confused picture at this stage, and details are still emerging of exactly what happened, but as you said a few minutes ago, it doesn't seem that anyone has been particularly seriously injured by what happened. But as I say, several eyewitnesses have reported describing a car being driven into cyclists deliberately. One person we spoke to saw several people on the ground. It wasn't clear whether they had been injured in the crash or whether they had been told to get down by police, who had responded very swiftly. But as you can probably see behind me, the police cordon stretches some several hundred metres between here at the end of Lambeth Bridge right down to Parliament and beyond, up Whitehall towards Trafalgar Square in the other direction. There are armed police officers, regular police officers. We've seen at least 2 fire engines and 1 ambulance arrive from this end of the police cordon. The police helicopter is circling above. So the response to this incident, which happened about an hour and a half or so ago now, before the peak of rush hour, but still a very busy time here in central London, that response from the emergency services is still very much ongoing.
And we can see armed officers behind you and the various emergency vehicles. And of course, this area would normally be teeming with people, commuters, cyclists and so on, would it not?
Yes, a very busy time at that time in the morning, just getting towards rush hour. It is August, Parliament is not sitting, so it's perhaps not as busy as it would be on a normal working day, if you like, but still a lot of tourists in the area, a lot of commuters making their way to work, plenty of traffic, plenty of pedestrians on the road outside Parliament. So yes, a very busy time for this to happen, and no surprise that several people were caught up in this when a car was driven deliberately into a group of cyclists, it seems, outside Parliament. And the response, as I've been describing, is still well underway. Just around us here, there are people arriving at the cordon on their bikes or on foot or by car, not being able to get through and having to make an alternative journey to work. But yes, this is a scene which is perhaps, unfortunately, increasingly familiar to people in central London, as another journey to work was disrupted by what seems to have been some sort of deliberate attempt to run people down outside the Houses of Parliament.
Stay with us, Jonathan, as you're there, but we're showing live pictures to our viewers at the moment, and I just want to point out where the vehicle is in that picture. Just below the centre to the right, you will see the car that has crashed into the security barriers outside the Houses of Parliament. That's outside the House of Lords, and that's Abingdon Street. That's called Abingdon Street, which is just off Parliament Square, which is slightly higher up your picture, where you can see all the emergency vehicles and police vehicles. And where the traffic lights are, that's where a number of cyclists were on the ground, some of whom could have been hurt, some of whom, as Jonathan said, may have just hit the floor, because that's what you do when you feel that there is an attack underway. This area, of course, Jonathan, is not too far from what happened just over a year ago with Khalid Masood, who drove across Westminster Bridge and hit pedestrians.
Sorry, Victoria, I'm just having a little bit of trouble hearing you because of the police activity around us here. You'll be able to hear, I'm sure, the sirens going, more police vehicles coming and going all the time. That one's actually labelled the dog section, and we saw police sniffer dogs on the scene very quickly as part of the initial response here earlier this morning. But yes, you mentioned the Westminster Bridge attack. That will of course be in people's minds this morning as they see these images of a heavy police response, armed police response to an incident outside Parliament. Just another unmarked police car emerging from behind the cordon this morning with sirens going and blue lights flashing. It's difficult to overstate really the scale of the police response here this morning, and that was underlined by the urgency with which we were told to move right back away from the Houses of Parliament when we first came out of the newsroom here to find out what has happened. The details have emerged bit by bit in the time since then, and it seems that while several people have been injured and one man, it's reported, has been arrested, the exact details of what happened are still unclear, but several eyewitness accounts piecing together a picture of a car being deliberately driven into a group of cyclists outside Parliament.
Thank you for the moment, Jonathan. Jonathan Blake, who is at the scene. And on your screen there, you can see highlighted the car just in front of the barriers that it crashed into at 7:37, according to the Metropolitan Police this morning.